The ambulance lights sliced through the night as Chinenye whispered, "Don't leave me." Justice felt the old bond tighten, even as fear clouded her fading eyes. At the hospital, the cold white lights made every second feel like judgment. Mama Chinenye shook uncontrollably, confessing that her pride had ruined everything. "Sometimes we help people fall without knowing," Justice murmured, his voice heavy. And as machines beeped in the distance, one question hung in the air. Would Chinenye survive the night? But to truly understand how this moment came to be, we must return to the very beginning. Justice was born in a small Nigerian village, where the sun rose like hope and set like disappointment. He grew up watching his mother struggle to feed him and his sister, and he learned early that life owed him nothing. When he became a young man, he made a vow under the ancient Udala tree. "One day, I will cross the great waters and change my destiny." Elders laughed, saying he was dreaming bigger than his age. But some dreams come from the ancestors, and they do not die easily. With the help of a distant relative, Justice secured a visa and traveled to the United States. The new world welcomed him with cold air and colder realities. He slept on friends' floors, washed plates in restaurants, and took any job his hands could find. Yet, every night he whispered, "I will succeed. I will not return empty." Justice eventually became a taxi driver in New York City. His first day behind the wheel came with blaring horns, impatient passengers, and the endless roar of traffic. Some passengers insulted him for his accent. Others mocked him for driving slowly. But Justice swallowed every bitterness and kept driving, because every mile took him closer to his dream. He saved little by little, cutting down on food and sleeping only a few hours. When other men spent money on flashy clothes, he bought nothing but hope. The city became both his battle and his teacher. With time, he learned every corner, like the lines on his palm, and the streets whispered to him, "Endure. Your reward is coming." After nearly 2 decades of suffering, saving, and sacrifice, Justice finally bought a house, an achievement that felt like touching the sky. It wasn't a mansion, but it was his, purchased with the sweat that soaked his clothes for years. The day he collected the keys, he cried like a baby, whispering thanks to God and his ancestors. He stood in the empty living room and imagined a family, laughter, footsteps, children running around. His greatest desire was to go back home, marry, and bring his wife to share this new life. In that moment, Justice promised himself, "My wife will never suffer the way I did." In Nigeria, Justice met Chinenye, a beautiful 18-year-old girl who had just finished secondary school. She dreamed of becoming a nurse, but poverty had clipped her wings, leaving her to sell tomatoes in a basket in the marketplace under the hot sun, which gave her the nickname Chinkata, because Nkata means basket in their local dialect. Justice saw her dignity in poverty and felt drawn to her gentle spirit. Chinenye admired Justice's humility and the way he spoke about responsibility. Though he was much older, she respected him deeply. When he proposed to her, she saw it as a miracle, a lifeline God had thrown her way. Nobody imagined that this tomato seller's life was about to change forever. Justice spent almost all his savings to process her visa, buy her clothes, pay her travel fees, and prepare her for life in America. Chinenye contributed nothing, not because she didn't want to, but because she had nothing. Justice never complained. Instead, he reminded himself that love required sacrifice. When she finally arrived in the United States, Chinenye could not hide her amazement. The buildings looked like giants. The cold weather bit her skin. Justice held her hand and said, "Welcome home. This place is for both of us." She smiled, unaware that their journey held both sweetness and sorrow. After a year, Chinenye begged Justice to bring her mother to America. She cried that her mother was lonely and suffering back home. Though Justice was still recovering financially, he agreed. He processed the papers, spent more money, and brought her mother to live with them. Chinenye's mother quickly realized that Justice was soft-hearted and took advantage of it. Soon, she began suggesting that Justice should train her daughter in nursing school because it will help the family. Justice agreed again, telling himself, "If my wife rises, we all rise." He did not know he was training the weapon that would one day be fashioned against him. Nursing school transformed Chinenye. Her English sharpened, her confidence bloomed, and her mother constantly whispered into her ears, "Don't allow this man to control you." As Chinenye's education grew, her respect for Justice decreased. She began correcting his grammar in public and laughing at the way he spoke. Justice noticed the change, but he kept silent. In his heart, he believed everything would settle once she got a job. He never imagined that the girl he lifted from a tomato stall would one day use English like a knife against him. When Chinenye got her nursing license, everything changed overnight. Suddenly, money flowed into her hands like a river. She bought new clothes, new phones, and even new friends. She no longer waited for Justice to come home before she ate. She no longer asked for his opinion before making decisions. Justice watched helplessly as his wife slipped away from him. He tried to talk to her, but she mocked him, saying, "You don't even understand English well. What can you advise me on?" Her words became arrows that pierced his heart. Still, he held on, praying that the woman he married would return. Chinenye and her mother soon began plotting. They told neighbors and friends that Justice was controlling, abusive, and emotionally damaging. Her mother coached her on what to say, how to cry, and how to twist stories. They claimed that Justice's broken English embarrassed her and affected her mental health. Justice didn't know anything. He kept working, kept loving, and kept sacrificing. Meanwhile, they gathered false evidence, recorded edited arguments, and prepared a wicked trap. The man who once saved them and changed her name from Chinkata to whom she is today was now the man they wanted to destroy. One morning, police arrived at the house. Justice was shocked as they handcuffed him while Chinenye cried crocodile tears, claiming he was violent and mentally abusive. He kept shouting, "I never touched her. I loved her with my life." But nobody listened. The system was already against him. In court, Chinenye played the role of a wounded angel. Her English impressed everyone, while Justice struggled to express himself. The judge, swayed by her performance and her mother's lies, granted her the house, the same house Justice had suffered close to 20 years to buy. Justice fainted in the courtroom, and when he woke up, his world had collapsed. Justice was given only 30 minutes to gather his belongings from the house he bought with nearly 2 decades of sweat. He stood outside in the cold, holding a small bag that contained all he had left. Snow fell heavily, soaking his clothes as neighbors watched from their windows. Some shook their heads in pity. Others whispered that he must have done something terrible to lose everything. As he walked away, his legs trembled. He looked back at the house, the home he dreamed of, the home he built for love. Now it was a tomb of betrayal. He cried until the tears froze on his cheeks, whispering, "Chinenye, why?" Justice had nowhere to go, so he went to a homeless shelter. The room smelled of damp clothes and sadness. Men of different races slept on metal beds, their snores echoing like the cries of broken souls. Justice lay on a hard mattress and stared at the ceiling, wondering how life could turn a man upside down so quickly. He remembered the years he drove a taxi with hope in his heart, believing that love would be his reward. Now he had nothing but pain. That night he made no prayers. He did not know if God was still listening. While Justice slept in a shelter, Chinenye held a small celebration in the house. Her friends congratulated her for standing up for herself, not knowing the truth. Her mother danced around the living room, praising her daughter's wisdom and courage. Chinenye felt powerful, as though she had conquered the world. She didn't think about the man who lifted her from a tomato stall. She didn't think about the sacrifices he made. Her heart had become a stone. Money and pride had blinded her soul, and the ancestors looked upon her with anger. Barely 3 months after the court ruling, Chinenye brought another man into the house. His name was Kelvin, a gym instructor, with smooth English and smooth lies. Kelvin moved in as though he owned the place, sitting in Justice's chair and sleeping in Justice's bed. Chinenye felt triumphant, believing she had upgraded her life. Kelvin fed her ego, telling her she deserved better than a local taxi driver. She laughed at his jokes, unaware that she was welcoming a serpent into her home. One morning, Chinenye woke up with a severe headache. Her vision was blurry and her hands shook. She dismissed it as stress and went to work. But by afternoon, she collapsed while attending to a patient. Her colleagues rushed her to the emergency room. That night, for the first time in years, she whispered a prayer. She felt a strange fear, a coldness that crawled up her spine. When the doctor walked in with a serious face, her heart sank. The doctors could not understand what was wrong. Chinenye's blood pressure was unstable, her heartbeat irregular, and her nerves behaving strangely. Tests came back normal, yet her body continued to fail her. Her mother cried and blamed evil spirits, while Kelvin grew distant. Within a week, Chinenye could no longer walk without assistance. Her once beautiful face became pale and swollen. Nurses whispered among themselves, "Is this not the same Chinenye who used to speak big grammar and boast?" The sickness humbled her quickly. In the shelter, Justice overheard two Nigerian men talking about a young nurse who had suddenly fallen ill. When they mentioned her name, Chinenye, his heart stopped. He sat on his bed, unable to move, unable to think. Memories flooded him like a broken dam. Despite everything she had done, Justice felt no joy in her downfall. Instead, he felt a pain deeper than betrayal, the pain of lost love. He whispered, "God, if this is punishment, let it be enough. I do not wish her death." As Chinenye's condition worsened, Kelvin grew impatient. He stopped visiting the hospital and eventually moved out of the house. He blocked her number and disappeared without a trace. Chinenye realized too late that the man she brought into Justice's house never loved her. He only loved the comfort. Her mother blamed Kelvin, but Chinenye blamed herself. She remembered Justice's kindness, his sacrifices, his humility. Each memory pierced her heart like a sword. For the first time, she understood what she had destroyed. Justice could not bear the weight on his heart. One cold evening, he walked to the hospital where Chinenye was admitted. When he entered the ward, even the nurses turned to stare. Some recognized him from the court case. Chinenye's mother gasped when she saw him. Chinenye, lying on the bed with tubes in her arms, opened her eyes slowly. When she saw Justice standing there, tears spilled down her face. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Justice walked closer and said softly, "Don't talk. I am not here for anger. I am here because I once loved you." Chinenye broke down in uncontrollable sobs. She tried to sit up but collapsed back onto the pillow. She wept like a child who lost her way. "Justice, forgive me," she whispered. Her mother also fell to her knees, crying and begging. Justice's heart softened. He laid his hand gently on her shoulder and said, "Chinenye, forgiveness is easy. But healing? That one is in God's hands." Chinenye clung to his hand, trembling, knowing that the ancestors had begun to judge her. Chinenye struggled to speak as she confessed everything, how she lied in court, how her mother convinced her to destroy Justice, how Kelvin manipulated her with sweet words. Justice listened silently, his face unreadable. Each word she spoke was a dagger, reopening wounds he thought had scarred over long ago. Her mother sobbed loudly, beating her chest and wailing, "We didn't know it would turn like this. We didn't know." But Justice did not look at her. He kept his eyes only on Chinenye, the woman he once dreamed of building a future with. When she finished speaking, he nodded slowly and whispered, "The truth always comes home." Chinenye's condition worsened. Her speech slurred, her legs weakened completely, and her fingers began to tremble uncontrollably. Even lifting a cup became difficult. Doctors were confused. Every test came out clean, yet her body failed more each day. They called it a mysterious neurological breakdown, but in her spirit, she knew what it truly was. The ancestors had begun their judgment. In her dreams, she saw shadows, figures with blind faces staring at her. She heard voices whispering, "You misused grace. You misused love." Chinenye would wake up screaming, while her mother ran to fetch nurses with trembling hands. Justice left the hospital that night heavy-hearted. He walked in the cold, questioning everything. How could love turn to poison? How could kindness be repaid with betrayal? His mind swirled with memories, her laughter, her smile, and then the lies and the court betrayal that shattered him. But deep inside, Justice battled with compassion. No matter how she wronged him, he was not a man who celebrated another's downfall. He prayed for strength, for understanding, and for the ability to forgive without becoming weak again. One night, Justice dreamed of the old village elder from his childhood, the one who used to sit under the Adaora tree and speak in riddles. The elder appeared with a calabash of water and said, "My son, when you lift someone who later pushes you down, do not curse them. Life itself will teach them what you could not." Justice woke up with tears streaming down his face. He understood the message. He was not the one to repay Chinenye. Life had taken over the judgment. All he needed was peace. As Chinenye grew weaker, her mother broke down completely. She regretted everything: the lies, the manipulation, the greed. She stayed by Chinenye's bedside, crying and praying every night. She tried calling Kelvin, but he never answered. The same man she defended now treated her daughter like dust. Sometimes she would go into the hospital bathroom, kneel on the cold floor, and beg God for mercy. "Do not punish my daughter for my greed," she cried. But the ancestors hear everything, and tears alone do not erase the past. Soon, word spread among Nigerians in America about Chinenye's strange illness. Some said she offended the ancestors. Others whispered that she mocked the wrong man. Older women shook their heads, saying, "When a woman forgets who lifted her, the earth remembers." Even those who once sided with her began avoiding her mother in public. People feared that whatever had befallen Chinenye might follow anyone who stood close. The world around them shrank, leaving only silence and regret. Justice slowly rebuilt his life. A Nigerian friend gave him a space in his basement to stay temporarily. Another offered him a part-time driving job. Though it was not easy, Justice found pride in starting again. He reminded himself that a man is not measured by what he loses, but by how he rises. Every night he prayed, not for wealth, not for revenge, but for peace. And the ancestors strengthened him. They whispered hope into his heart, and gradually his spirit healed. One night, as Chinenye drifted between sleep and consciousness, she saw a vision. She stood beside a river, and across the water, she saw two shadows. One looked like Justice, and the other like her younger self selling tomatoes. The younger Chinenye cried and shouted, "Why did you change? Why did you forget where you came from?" Chinenye fell to her knees in the vision, weeping until the river turned red with her tears. She realized that the sickness was not just of the body, it was the weight of her actions pressing down on her soul. And until she made peace with the man she destroyed, her spirit would never be free. Justice visited the hospital again. This time, Chinenye could barely lift her head. Her voice was shaky, her hands cold. When she saw him, she cried softly, "Justice, every day I suffer. I remember how you loved me." She looked into his eyes with deep regret. "I destroyed my own blessing." Justice sat beside her bed, his face calm. "Chinenye," he said gently, "what you did broke me. But holding hatred will only break me again." She cried harder, realizing that even in her darkest moment, he spoke with kindness she no longer deserved. Justice prayed silently beside her. He asked God to give her peace, to give her strength, and to give her time to make her heart right before her final judgment. Chinenye felt warmth flow through her body, and for the first time since the illness began, she slept peacefully. Her mother watched from the corner, tears streaming down her cheeks. She knew that Justice's prayer had done what all her loud wailing could not do. In that moment, she understood the difference between loud religion and quiet righteousness. Chinenye was moved to a quieter room in the hospital as her condition worsened. The once bold young nurse now struggled to breathe without assistance. Every time she opened her eyes, she felt trapped inside a shell her own actions had created. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand tightly, whispering prayers mixed with guilt. Whenever the nurses cleaned her, Chinenye heard their whispered conversations. They spoke of her beauty, her intelligence, and her pride, and how everything collapsed so quickly. They said her sickness felt spiritual. She wanted to cover her ears, but she no longer had the strength. Justice continued working small jobs, sometimes Uber, sometimes delivery jobs, sometimes odd jobs around his friend's apartment building. Life was not easy, but he did not complain. He had learned to find peace in the little he had, and he refused to let bitterness control his heart. One Sunday, he attended a small African church service. The pastor preached, "Forgiveness is not for the offender, but for the wounded heart." Justice felt like the words were spoken directly to him. He cried quietly throughout the service, and afterward he felt lighter than he had in years. That night, Justice dreamed again of the village elder under the Udala tree. This time, the elder placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "The one who broke your heart has now broken herself. It is not your place to carry her punishment. Release her from your spirit." Justice woke up with a deep breath. He knew what he had to do. He had already forgiven her in his heart, but now he needed to speak it aloud. He needed to release her so that his own destiny could move forward again. Meanwhile, Chinenye's house, the house she stole from Justice, grew cold and empty. Kelvin had moved out long ago, taking anything valuable he could carry. The furniture sat untouched, like silent witnesses to broken promises. Her neighbors avoided the place, saying the house had a heavy atmosphere. Her mother returned there one evening to pick up some things. As she walked through the empty rooms, she felt chills crawling up her spine. She whispered into the silence, "We destroyed a good man, and now everything is destroying us." Back in the hospital, Chinenye's emotional state collapsed. Her sickness had weakened her body, but guilt weakened her soul. She cried every night until her pillow was soaked. She begged God for mercy. She begged her ancestors for forgiveness. She begged life to give her one more chance to make things right. Her mother watched helplessly. She wished she could turn back time. She wished she had never encouraged the lies. She wished she had known that greed could destroy an entire future. Justice returned to the hospital one cold afternoon. He brought with him a small Bible and a packet of Chinenye's favorite Nigerian biscuits. When he entered the room, both Chinenye and her mother burst into tears, as though hope itself had walked in. Justice smiled gently and said, "Peace be with you." Chinenye reached for his hand with trembling fingers. The shame in her eyes was painful to watch, but Justice did not judge her. He simply sat beside her bed and listened to her heart. Chinenye cried as she confessed deeper truths, things even her mother didn't know. She confessed how she used to pray that Justice would be more educated, how she wished to change him, how Kelvin convinced her that she would have a better life without him. Each confession broke her more. Justice listened. He asked no questions. He made no accusations. He simply let her speak, because sometimes a soul needs to pour out its darkness before light can enter. When she finished, he wiped her tears gently and said, "You are lost. I pray you find yourself again." Justice held Chinenye's hand and prayed for her. He prayed that God would forgive her, that the ancestors would have mercy, and that her spirit would find peace. As he prayed, Chinenye cried softly, and her mother knelt on the hospital floor, shaking with sobs. When Justice finished, a strange calmness filled the room. Chinenye's breathing steadied. Her trembling eased. Even the nurses later said they felt something shift in the atmosphere, like a heavy burden had lifted from the air. For the first time since the illness began, Chinenye had one good night. She slept peacefully without nightmares. When she woke up, she felt a slight strength in her fingers. The doctors were surprised and encouraged. They increased their care, hoping she was beginning to recover. Chinenye's mother thanked Justice repeatedly. She called him an angel, a savior, a man of peace. But Justice simply shook his head and said, "I am only doing what a human being should do. We all need mercy sometimes." Though Chinenye's condition improved slightly, Justice knew it was time for him to let go completely. He visited her one last time. Chinenye begged him, "Please, don't leave me." Her voice cracked with fear and regret. But Justice held her hand gently and said, "I forgive you, but my destiny cannot remain in this hospital room." He left quietly, his heart finally free. Chinenye cried as he walked away, tears not just of sickness, but of deep realization that she had lost the only man who truly loved her. Justice stepped outside into the fresh air, feeling the world open before him once more. As Justice walked away, Chinenye's mother collapsed in the hospital hallway, overwhelmed with guilt. She realized she had been the architect of her daughter's downfall. Her greed had pushed Chinenye to manipulate, lie, and betray an innocent man. And now, the weight of those decisions crushed her spirit. She saw Justice leaving, and something inside her broke. She remembered how he used to bring food for the family in Nigeria, how he helped pay her medical bills, how he treated her like his own mother. Now she wished she had protected him instead of poisoning her daughter's heart. Chinenye lay on her bed, replaying her entire life. She saw herself as the tomato seller who once dreamed of becoming someone great. She saw Justice lifting her from poverty with love. She saw how America changed her, how she chased respect, money, and attention, forgetting the hands that fed her. The realization tormented her. She whispered to herself, "I destroyed my blessing with my own hands." Tears rolled down her cheeks, mixing with the tubes and wires attached to her. Her heart longed for a chance to make things right, but time was running fast. Meanwhile, Justice's life began improving slowly. The African church community helped him secure a full-time job managing delivery trucks. His dedication, humility, and honesty impressed everyone. Within 6 months, he moved from the basement room to a small, clean apartment of his own. He began saving money again, little by little. Though life was still hard, peace filled his heart. He no longer carried bitterness. He walked with purpose, and for the first time in years, he felt hope rise like dawn. Chinenye had another dream. She saw a river again, but this time the water was dark, almost black. On the opposite bank stood the elder from Justice's dreams. He raised his staff and said, "Your sickness is not punishment. It is a reminder. Repent fully before the river closes." She tried to cross, but her legs felt heavy like stone. She cried, "Help me!" The elder whispered, "You must release the darkness you created. Only then can light return to your body." She woke up trembling, drenched in sweat. The doctors finally gave her condition a name: autoimmune neurodegeneration, a rare illness where the body attacks its own nerves. There was no known cure, only treatments to slow it down. Chinenye listened as the doctor explained everything, and her heart shattered. She thought she would faint from fear. Her mother cried until nurses carried her out of the room. Chinenye stared at the ceiling, whispering, "Justice, I wish I could undo everything." The sickness had become her shadow, following her at every turn. As the truth spread about her illness, many people who once celebrated her success slowly distanced themselves. Some feared the sickness. Others said it was karma. A few even mocked her behind her back, saying, "This is what happens when you forget the person who made you." Chinenye felt abandoned and ashamed. She finally understood how Justice had felt walking out of the court alone. Now she walked that same road. Only hers was darker, lonelier, and filled with regret. Months later, Kelvin suddenly reappeared. He visited her in the hospital, pretending to care. But in truth, he had heard about her disability checks and wanted a share. He held her hand and said, "Baby, I'm sorry. I made a mistake leaving you." But Chinenye saw through his lies immediately. She could barely speak, but she whispered, "Get out." Kelvin's face hardened. He spat insults at her as he left the room, revealing his true heart. Chinenye cried afterward, not because he left, but because she once chose him over justice. Chinenye tried writing a letter to Justice, but her hands trembled too much. She wanted to thank him for his forgiveness, to apologize again, to bless him for praying for her healing. Every sentence she tried to write came out shaky and broken. Eventually, she dropped the pen and cried. She realized she had wasted years chasing things that never mattered, while the one person who truly loved her was now too far away to reach. Justice continued working hard. His manager noticed his dedication and offered him a supervisory position. His salary increased and he enrolled in a small business course to improve himself. For the first time in many years, Justice smiled without forcing it. He sometimes thought about Chinenye, but not with pain. He prayed for her healing every night. He wished her well, even though her chapter in his life had closed. Justice walked into the future with renewed strength. One night, Chinenye asked her mother to bring her Bible. Her mother placed it on her lap and held her as she trembled. "Mama," she whispered, "I used my own hands to destroy my home. I mocked the man who lifted me. I lied against him, and now my body lies against me." Her mother cried silently. She stroked her daughter's hair and said, "I pushed you into those decisions. Forgive me too." Mother and daughter wept together, realizing how their greed had burnt the foundation of their lives. And for the first time, true repentance touched Chinenye's heart. Chinenye sat in the doctor's office, her face pale and shaky. She had come for a routine checkup, but the doctor's expression changed as he held the results. "Chinenye, we found something concerning," he said softly. The walls suddenly felt smaller. Her heart began to beat faster. She swallowed hard, her fingers trembling on her lap. When she stepped out of the room, her mother rushed to her. "What is it, my daughter?" Chinenye couldn't speak. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but fear. Deep fear. For the first time in her life, she felt powerless, the same way Justice once felt when she destroyed him. Word travels fast in the African community abroad. A church member told Justice, "Your ex-wife, something is wrong with her health." Justice froze. Even with everything she had done, his heart twitched with concern. Pain may scar the heart, but kindness remains like a hidden river beneath stones. He went home that night and prayed for her. "God, give me strength. Let me not rejoice in anyone's downfall." Tears rolled down his cheeks. He prayed for peace, even though he had been denied peace for years. That night, for the first time in months, Justice slept deeply. Chinenye returned to the hospital for confirmation. The doctor spoke gently, but his words felt like knives. "You have a rare autoimmune disease attacking your nervous system. It is aggressive. We must begin treatment immediately." The room spun around her. She tried to form words but failed. Her mother burst into tears. "No, not my daughter!" But the doctor only shook his head. "She will need long-term care. She may lose strength in her limbs. She may not be able to work again." Chinenye stared blankly, remembering how she mocked Justice's English, his job, his struggles. Now, she could barely lift her own hand. When the new man living in Justice's former house heard about Chinenye's illness, his attitude changed instantly. He stopped coming home as often. He slept on the couch and made excuses. "I cannot handle this kind of stress," he said coldly. She begged him, but he avoided her eyes. One morning, Chinenye woke up to find his clothes gone, the wardrobe empty. He had abandoned her completely. He left no note, no explanation. Her mother screamed in anger, but Chinenye simply stared at the wall, realizing the painful truth. She had destroyed a good man for someone who never loved her. The house that once shone with pride and victory now became silent and cold. Chinenye could no longer walk properly. Her hands shook. She could not cook. She could not work. She could barely bathe herself. Her mother tried, but it was too much for her aging body. The neighbors who once admired her success now discussed her downfall in hushed tones. God is watching, they said. Everything in life has consequences. Chinenye heard their whispers through the window and cried bitterly, wishing she could go back in time and undo her betrayal. Justice had rebuilt his life slowly. He rented a small room, continued driving his taxi, and joined a men's support group at church. Talking about his pain helped him heal. He became a mentor to newly arrived immigrants, teaching them how to avoid the mistakes he made. People admired him for his humility. "Justice, you are strong," they often said. But he smiled and replied, "Pain made me strong. Suffering gave me wisdom." His heart was still wounded, but no longer bleeding. One evening, Justice received a call. "Please, come. It's Chinenye," the voice said, trembling. Justice hesitated. Memories rushed back. Betrayal, lies, court, humiliation. But something inside him whispered, "Go." He drove slowly, memories heavy in his chest. When he reached the house, Mama Chinenye opened the door, her eyes swollen from crying. "Justice? My daughter's dying." Justice felt something break inside him. Not anger, not joy, just deep sadness. Life truly is a circle. Justice walked inside and saw Chinenye lying on the couch, thin, weak, trembling. Her once proud eyes were now filled with regret and shame. She tried to speak, but her lips quivered. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Justice, I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. Justice stood there, unable to move. Seeing her suffering stabbed him like a knife. Despite everything she had done, he remembered the girl he once loved, the girl selling tomatoes under the sun. He sat beside her silently. His presence alone made her cry harder. Chinenye forced herself to talk. "I destroyed the only man who loved me. I followed pride. I listened to my mother. I thought success made me better than you." Her voice cracked. "I lied in court. I took your house. I mocked you. I broke you. And God has punished me." Justice felt tears gather in his eyes, but he said nothing. She held his hand weakly and whispered, "Please forgive me, so my soul can rest. I don't want to die with this burden." Her confession filled the room like smoke. "Even Mama Chinenye," I sobbed, trembling with guilt and fear. Justice closed his eyes and breathed deeply. All the pain of the past rose inside him like a storm. He remembered sleeping in his taxi, losing everything, crying alone. But he also remembered the teachings of his late father. A heart that forgives sleeps peacefully. He looked at her and nodded slowly. "Chinenye, I forgive you. I release you from my heart. Your sin is not bigger than God's mercy." Chinenye burst into uncontrollable tears, relieved. Mama Chinenye knelt on the floor, begging for forgiveness too. Justice simply stood, tears falling silently, knowing he had risen above everything they did to him. The room fell silent after Justice's words. Chinenye sobbed quietly, her chest rising and falling like a dying flame. For the first time in many years, she felt peace touch her heart. Forgiveness is a medicine that heals even the unseen wounds, and at that moment, she understood its true value. Justice's presence, calm and steady, felt like a warm light in the darkness of her suffering. Mama Chinenye stared at Justice as if seeing him for the first time in her life. The same man she mocked, the same man she pushed her daughter to destroy. She whispered, "My son, may God bless you. I never knew." But Justice gently raised his hand and said, "God sees all. We must all answer to our deeds." Just as Justice stood to leave, Chinenye's body jerked violently. A sudden seizure overtook her, and she gasped for air. Mama Chinenye screamed, falling beside her daughter. Justice rushed forward, lifting her head gently and calling her name, trying to steady her trembling body. The ambulance arrived within minutes, lights flashing like angry spirits in the night. As they lifted Chinenye onto the stretcher, her hand reached for justice. Her eyes, filled with terror, locked onto his. "Don't leave me," she whispered. Justice swallowed hard, feeling the old bond pull at his heart again. Justice and Mama Chinenye sat in the waiting area, the white hospital lights too bright, too cold. Nurses rushed up and down the hall, machines beeped, and whispers of urgency echoed through the building. Mama Chinenye trembled beside Justice, clutching her wrapper. "This is all my fault," she sobbed. "I pushed her. I encouraged her pride. I destroyed her marriage." Justice sighed deeply. "Mama, sometimes we help people fall without knowing." She bowed her head in shame. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "In life, repayment doesn't always come in money. Sometimes it comes in lessons." A doctor finally approached, his face heavy. "She is alive but weak. Her organs are failing faster than expected. We will do everything we can." The words hit Mama Chinenye like a hammer. She collapsed into a chair, wailing. Justice felt tears sting his own eyes. Even though he tried to be strong, he paced the hallway, remembering how Chinenye once walked confidently through the same hospital, wearing her nursing scrubs, proud and full of life. Now she was the patient, fragile and helpless. Life, he realized, has its own court, its own judge, and its own punishment, far beyond what human hands can give. When Justice entered the room, Chinenye lay still, her breathing shallow. She opened her eyes slowly and managed a faint smile. "You came." Her voice was soft, nothing like the sharp tone she once used. She motioned for Mama Chinenye to step closer. "Mama, I forgive you. For everything." Mama Chinenye burst into tears and knelt beside the bed. "My daughter, I am sorry. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't know pride could destroy." Chinenye touched her mother's face weakly. "We allowed greed to blind us, and now see where I am." Justice watched quietly, feeling a painful mix of sorrow and relief. That night, the machines beeped more rapidly. Nurses rushed in and out. Chinenye's condition worsened. Her new life built on pride and falsehood was slipping away faster than any doctor could stop. Justice stood at her bedside, praying silently, while Mama Chinenye held her daughter's hand and begged God for mercy. In her final moments of clarity, Chinenye whispered, "Justice, you were the only one who truly loved me. I wish I had known the meaning of loyalty earlier." Her words pierced Justice deeply. He wanted to speak, but tears blocked his voice. He squeezed her hand gently, letting her know she wasn't alone. As dawn approached, the sky painted the window with soft blue light. Chinenye's chest rose and fell slowly, then even slower. Justice leaned closer, listening to her faint breaths. Her mother trembled uncontrollably, praying in broken sentences. Then, silence. The machines gave one long, painful beep. Chinenye Okezi, once the prideful nurse, once the girl selling tomatoes, once the woman who betrayed a good man, took her final breath. Justice closed his eyes and whispered, "May your soul find peace." Mama Chinenye collapsed, screaming her daughter's name as doctors rushed in, but it was too late. Chinenye's funeral was simple. A few friends came, mostly the ones she had ignored when success blinded her. The man she brought into Justice's house never appeared. The community whispered again, this time with pity. "Pride buries faster than sickness," one elder said. "May her story warn others." Justice stood quietly at the graveside. He felt no anger, no satisfaction, just a deep ache for a life wasted on pride and wrong choices. Mama Chinenye leaned on him, weeping, and he supported her gently. Even after all the pain she caused him, Justice still chose kindness. That was his strength. 2 months later, Justice received a letter from the city. Upon Chinenye's death, the house legally reverted to the original owner, Justice, the very home he had cried for, the home he once slept outside of, the home he lost through betrayal, but regained through patience and destiny. He stood in front of the house one evening, tears filling his eyes as memories flooded back. When he stepped inside, he didn't see the pain or the betrayal anymore. He saw his journey, his suffering, his strength. He whispered, "God, thank you for restoring what I lost." The house was no longer a symbol of pain. It became a monument of resilience. Justice renovated the house slowly. He repainted the walls, repaired the broken things, and filled the rooms with fresh memories. He joined a new church and shared his testimony. People cried when they heard his story. Many said, "Your endurance is a message every young person must learn." Justice became a counselor for immigrants, teaching them about patience, loyalty, and choosing partners wisely. His story became a lantern for others walking through the dark, and every morning, when he stepped outside, he breathed deeply and said, "The past is gone. My new life has begun." 3 months after Chinenye's burial, Justice received an unexpected knock at his door. When he opened it, a young girl stood there, dressed modestly, holding a small bag. She bowed respectfully and said, "Good evening, sir. I'm Adaora. Chinenye was my senior in secondary school." Justice stepped aside and allowed her in gently. Adaora explained that she had heard the full story from Mama Chinenye. She had admired Chinenye once and was shocked by how things ended. She came to apologize on behalf of everyone who encouraged her back then. Her sincerity touched Justice's heart. For the first time, someone came not to take, but to give respect. Adaora told Justice she had recently arrived in the United States as a student, but was struggling deeply. "I don't have anyone to guide me," she said, ashamed. "Your story encouraged me. I didn't know true humility existed until I heard about you." Justice listened quietly, remembering his own lonely years as a new immigrant. Instead of sending her away, he gave her food and allowed her to stay in his guest room for a few days. He made it clear there must be boundaries and respect. Adaora agreed. Justice saw in her the same innocence Chinenye once had, before pride poisoned her heart. Weeks later, Mama Chinenye visited Justice. She looked smaller, thinner, and humbled. Life had dealt her a heavy blow. She walked slowly to the door and knelt instantly when Justice opened it. "My son, forgive me. I lost everything. My daughter, my peace, my pride." Justice quickly lifted her up, refusing to let her kneel. She cried in his arms, shaking violently, "Please, let me serve you with the remaining years of my life. You are a true son to me." Justice calmly wiped her tears and told her she was forgiven. That moment healed a wound in both their hearts. Even the air felt lighter in the house. Adaora proved herself hardworking, disciplined, and respectful. She cooked sometimes, cleaned, and studied late into the night. Justice was impressed by her seriousness. She reminded him that goodness still existed in the world, no matter how much betrayal one had suffered. One evening, Adaora told him, "Your story teaches that no matter how long night lasts, morning will come. You inspire me to be a better woman." Justice nodded quietly. Her words soothed his spirit. The house, once filled with pain, now breathed hope again. Justice was offered a major promotion at work. His years of loyalty and honesty finally paid off. He became a supervisor, overseeing multiple drivers. His salary increased significantly. For the first time since arriving in America, he felt like life was rewarding him for his perseverance. He bought a new car and began saving for future investments. He no longer felt like the broken man who once slept in his taxi. Now, he walked with dignity, his shoulders straight, his voice calm, his heart healed. Justice was invited to speak at a community seminar about immigrant struggles and relationships. The hall was full. Men and women listened with deep attention. He told them, "Marriage is not a decoration. It is a responsibility. Choose the heart, not the beauty. Choose humility, not pride." People clapped with emotion. Some wiped tears. His story began to spread across the local African community. Elder women said, "Every young girl must hear this." Fathers said, "Every son should learn from Justice's endurance." Justice's pain became a lesson, saving others from the same path. One evening, Adaora approached Justice nervously. Sir, I want to tell you something, she said, twisting her fingers shyly. Justice nodded. You can speak. She looked at him with eyes full of gratitude. You changed my life. You restored my confidence. You guided me with respect. Then she paused, swallowed hard, and whispered, I think I am beginning to care for you. Not out of pity, but out of admiration. Justice was stunned. For a moment, he looked away, memories of the past flashing in his mind. Could he trust again? Could he open his heart after everything? That night, Justice could not sleep. Adaora's words echoed in his mind. She was kind, mature, respectful. Everything he wished Chinenye had remained. But he also knew he must move carefully. As dawn approached, he made his decision. He invited Adaora to sit with him at the dining table. He spoke warmly but firmly. Adaora, if your feelings are true, time will prove it. Let us take things slowly. We must both heal fully and build properly. Love born in haste often dies in regret. Adaora smiled softly and agreed. Their journey would be slow, steady, and dignified. One afternoon, Justice visited Chinenye's grave. The cemetery was quiet, the air still. He stood before her tombstone and whispered, May your story save others from destruction. As he turned to leave, a thought struck him deeply. The real nemesis was not sickness. It was pride. Pride destroyed her, not illness. He realized that pride kills faster than any disease. It breaks marriages, shatters destinies, and blinds the heart. Chinenye's sickness was only the final stage of a spiritual downfall that began the day she allowed mockery, greed, and arrogance into her heart. Justice left the cemetery with a new understanding. Humility is the greatest protection a person can have. 1 year later, Justice stood outside his restored house. Adaora had graduated with honors. She was now working as a respected nurse, humble, gentle, nothing like the prideful path Chinenye took. She and Justice eventually began a healthy, mature relationship, founded on mutual respect, which later blossomed into marriage, celebrated by people from all walks of life, friends, colleagues, and fellow immigrants alike, who admired Justice for his patience, humility, and perseverance. Their union was filled with love, respect, and joy, and they built a life together marked by laughter, shared dreams, and the quiet happiness that comes from enduring life's trials with grace. 2 years later, on a beautiful Saturday morning, Justice held Adaora's hand as they walked through the neighborhood, while their 3 children, a boy and the twins played, birds sang, and the sun shone softly on their faces. Justice looked up and whispered, After every storm, there is a rainbow. He had lost everything once, yet God restored him. He had been betrayed, yet he found peace. He had been mocked, yet he rose above every insult. And in the end, Justice became a living testimony that good hearts may suffer, but they never lose. The story ends, but the lesson remains. Never bite the hand that lifted you. Never let pride destroy your destiny. And never forget, justice always returns. If you enjoyed this story, please like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more powerful videos like this. Thank you for watching.